What is the evolution of F1 driving styles? From the great names of the 1900s such as Villeneuve, Fangio, and Schumacher, to the drivers nowadays, in the 21st century, such as Alonso, Hamilton, and Verstappen, there has been a drastic change in F1 driving styles. They were initially aggressive with the sketchy 1950s F1 cars. Nowadays they are smooth as a result of the sensitive and high downforce F1 cars. This is the evolution of driving styles from the 1950s to today. You can also read about the evolution of F1 driving styles. In my book, I explore over 50 F1 drivers' driving styles over 70 years of F1 history. To find out more, click on the link in the description. In the 1950s, we saw the first great F1 drivers emerge, Fangio being the best. With the sketchy cars, unpredictable reliability, and unsafe monocoque designs, most lap time was shaved off according to how brave the driver was. The cars were easy to slide, especially with the thin tires having a small contact patch with the track. Most drivers were aggressive and had to power slide their way around corners in order to get the most out of the car. In the 1960s, the emergence of F1 legends with the likes of Jackie Stewart, Jack Brabham, and Jim Clark created a truly competitive era. There was a large proportion of drivers with an aggressive style. Similarly to the 1950s, we saw them sliding the cars around the corners, going sideways quite often. This was at the exception of Jackie Stewart, who was one of the first drivers in F1 history to adopt a smooth driving style. Transitioning to the 1970s, the ratio of smooth to aggressive drivers remained. Niki Lauda and Emerson Fittipaldi being the great names to possess a smooth touch to the car. James Hunt, on the other hand, was wildly aggressive, similar to Gilles Villeneuve's tail-happy driving style. The cars were getting faster and faster, with the death toll of 13 in the 1970s remaining similar to 15 who died in the 1950s. In the 1980s, however, the death toll was only 4, after more consideration into safety features in the car were made. Adrian Newey, in his book How to Build a Car, recalls having to balance off performance and speed with the safety and structural integrity of the car. The cars got relatively safer, with drivers taking advantage of this to push them to their absolute limits. Prominent figures like Nigel Mansell, Ayrton Senna, and Alain Prost emerged, all with relatively smoother styles than the previous decade. It seemed like the ratio of smooth to aggressive was becoming more even. In the 1990s, a rebirth of aggression was seen with Michael Schumacher, John Alesi, and Jacques Villeneuve. The cars were becoming ever more reliant on aerodynamic grip and downforce, as technology advanced rapidly. Overall, despite the few key figures with aggressive styles, the majority of drivers were transitioning towards a smoother driving style, with the likes of Rubens Barrichello, who somehow managed to right foot brake, despite not having a clutch pedal, Mika Hakkinen, and Robert Kubica. Fast forward to the 21st century, in the early 2000s, the screaming V10s flooded the sounds of the racetrack. Cars were extremely quick at this stage and were doing lap times similar to the next decade's F1 cars. The transition of aggressive to smooth driving styles were analogous to the dodo becoming extinct. Aggression was becoming less popular as a practical, all-rounder driving style. Smoothness was key to being consistently fast in the races, but not so important in qualifying. In 2009, ERS was introduced into the sport but was only widely used by teams in the early to mid-2010s. The cars were now very reliant on downforce, and as the ERS systems were being developed, drivers had to adapt to a new era of driving styles. Further, the tires became softer, and the characteristics of the compounds meant that smoothness was vital for both the qualifying and race session. Sliding around was no longer viable, with drivers being more gentle with loading the car up in the corners. That takes us to today, in the 2020s, where the driving styles are biased towards the smooth end of the F1 driving style compass. Similar to the late 2010s, smoothness was practically the only way to be fast in both qualifying and races. With heavy cars, reliant on electric boost from the KERS system, it is now a very data-driven sport. Drivers, if they have any chance of driving near the limit of the car, have to master their car setup and tweak their onboard brake bias, differential and ERS strap mode. Further, the calculative use of telemetry to find where drivers can shave off lap time is commonly seen in all teams' garages. Before, it seemed like car setup was only 20% of the picture, but now, it seems like 40%. Of course, this is not to discount the driver's driving ability and how well they can adapt to the car. It goes without saying that the greatest drivers in the history of F1 are the ones who can drive fast with any car, any track, any opponents, any weather condition, and most importantly, any driving style. Thank you for watching. Make sure to check out the Evolution of Driving Styles book. Link is in the description below. Subscribe for more content like this.